So when I started seriously playing guitar in high school, I'd played a little bit before when I was kind of like late elementary school into middle school. I started in third grade, but I didn't really play a whole lot of substance at that point. Kind of just banged around on stuff, took some lessons, didn't really like it. Towards the end of middle school, going into high school, I kind of started to take it a little bit more seriously. Still not going to lessons or anything, but I scoured the internet a lot as, learning guitar players did in 2015 and as they do now. And I was always very, very interested in the more like music theory kind of angles of playing the guitar, to the point where I remember being in choir in high school and asking my friends that were in choir if they were understanding, like, I didn't know any of the terms for it, but I was asking if they were understanding the part writing and why the stuff worked the way it did, and why these particular chords that we were singing in this high school choir sounded interesting to my ear. So it's kind of just always been something I'm interested in. And now, being the big music theory nerd in a friend group of some very, very nerdy musicians, and I say that endearingly, these are my best friends, but every now and then one of my friends will message me about something music theory related, whether it's something they just realized or whether it's something they're asking me. Different people do this too. And today, my friend Zach sent me something that he had realized and was sharing with me. And so I responded, and I kind of responded with like oh yeah, well, did you know this? And we talked about it for a second, and we decided that I was going to make a video to send to him to properly explain what it was that I was trying and so desperately failing at being able to explain over a text message. So as I thought about this, I was like, I'll just make a video of it and put it on YouTube and share it with the world and see if other people are particularly interested in this. So this is my full dissection of dominant chords and some of the cool stuff you can do with dominant chords and why dominant chords work the way they do. So let's just get right into it and show you why a dominant chord works.
Cool. All right, let's say for the sake of this that we are in the key of A. A major. A major. So we are resolving everything to an A major chord, your one chord, which is A for your root. That's a weird way to say it. Your root, your third is a C sharp, and your fifth is an E, A major chord. The 5 chord of A major is an E7 chord. So I'll put that 7 there to make it correct for the college-trained music theorists. E, G sharp, B, and D. So that's your 5-to-1, right? The root of all harmonic motion, effectively. The reason that works is because of 2 notes that are in this chord, always being the 3rd and the 7th of it. The 3rd is what's resolving you back home to A. That's what's getting you there. You have an upward, which I'll use a U to denote that, an upward resolution from G sharp to A, the 3rd of your dominant 7 chord to the root of your 1 chord. And then your 7th of your dominant 7 chord is resolving downward to C sharp, the 3rd. That is the basis for all of it. It's the reason that works, is you have your 7th resolving downward, your 3rd resolving upward. That is the reason that chord works. So it's also the reason why with dominant 7 chords, you can always just omit the root and play this G sharp diminished triad and get the exact same resolution, because this E isn't really important. It's useful for part writing, because if you're writing for like 4-part harmony, you can just retain this E into the E here. So, but even then, that's doing the same thing. If you're retaining it, you're omitting it. Like, by keeping this E here, it's not part of the motion of this change at all. Well, the real motion is in the 3rd and the 7th, going to the root and the 3rd of your 1 chord. So that's where the dominant chord, why it works. So the next step up from just a 5-to-1, you see it all over jazz, is your 2 to 5 to 1, 2, 5, 1. Notes of that, your 2 chord is B minor, so we'll do B, D, F sharp, and A. Going to 5, I'll actually put the 7 in there, do 5, a dominant 7th chord, for the exact reason of we need that D in the top of it to get us resolved back to the 1 properly. So E, G sharp, B, D, back to 1, A, C sharp, E. So we know that this third is always going to resolve to that, the root. And we know that the 7th is always going to resolve to the 3rd. So that's your downward resolution, your upward resolution. Which that contrary motion is also part of what makes it work. But the whole reason that the 2 is usually preceding the 5 is because that also applies in here, is that this D has not the same half step down, because both of these motions are a half step, which is what makes it work so smoothly. So this D technically has the same pull, but it's just it's not quite as strong because it's a whole step down. But this A to the G sharp has the exact same half step downward pull. This D up to the E is a whole step upward, but that pull is still there. So that's the reason the 2, 5, 1 is so common, because that 2 is more or less a 5 of the 5. It is a dominant of the dominant chord. So you have tonic, dominant, and then this is a sort of secondary dominant. You've got this similar pull going to this pull, which is the strongest. So if you wanted to make it secondary dominant and make it a true 5 of 5, you can just change it from being a minor 7 chord to a dominant 7 chord. You only have to change one note in that. So instead of B, D, F sharp, you just make it a B dominant 7 chord, B, D sharp, F sharp, A. Now you have the exact same pull that you have from 5 to 1 from 2 to 5. This is also sometimes notated, I'll write it here as 5 of 5, but for this purpose, I'll just write it as major 2. So you've got the exact same thing here, is you have A resolving down to, A resolving down to G sharp, and then your D sharp is resolving up to E. So you have the same resolutions working, but they're also not in parallel, right? Because this D sharp is resolving to the E here, but then this E doesn't resolve to anything. It's the D that's on top of it that's resolving you down to the C sharp. So it's never just parallel motion. You actually have like distinct things working separately to get you this this kind of falling resolution. And this doesn't end here with a major 2. You could do a 5 of 5 of 5 and have an F sharp dominant chord, because that's the 5 of this B would be F sharp. You could put an F sharp dominant chord in front of this, and before that you could put a C sharp dominant chord there, and you could just run whole step, well, it's not whole step, but fifth based harmony straight through it. You could traverse the circle of fifths that way, all with dominant chords, and it's never going to break this formula of being a proper resolution every single time. Where it gets really interesting is with the use of tritone substitutions. So the whole shtick of a tritone substitution is that you are taking a chord, a dominant chord, that is a tritone away from your 5 chord. So if we're in the key of A still, your tritone away from E is going to be B flat. So that would be a B flat 7 chord, has a B flat, a D, an F, and an A flat in it. We'll put that, we'll note that as a flat 2 7 chord, tritone subbed chord. Now, what's fun about this is that it has the exact same resolution as a 5-to-1 resolution. The tendency tones, the third and the seventh, are both still in this chord. They're just not in the exact same place. Is that your seventh, your downward resolution, is now just from the third to the third, your downward resolution, and then your upward resolution is going from the seventh of the chord up to the root of your one chord. But it's still the same resolution. Your directions are exactly the same. You have an upward resolution getting you to the one, and you have a downward resolution getting you to the third. They're just in different places in the first chord. They're starting from a different point, but the movements are getting you to the same point in the same direction. So for all intents and purposes, a flat 2 dominant 7 chord is exactly the same as your regular dominant 7 chord from the 5. As I said earlier, you can omit your root note of it anyway and just run it as a diminished triad. So why not substitute something? Why not change what the root note is? And then your only note of difference is this F, which, again, that B in the diminished triad is not doing any real work. It's just the D and the G sharp that are getting you to the C sharp and the A, respectively. So having an A flat get you to the A and a D still get you to the C sharp, you have the exact same chord on your hands. So you can always do that, is that if you're playing a, let's say we're in a different key. Let's say we're in the key of E major. Your dominant chord of that key would typically be a B7, but you can also just play an F7 and it will work exactly the same as that B7. So that's kind of the whole deal with tritone substitutions, is that you can always just, instead of playing a dominant chord that's a fifth above your root note, you can just play it a half step above your root note and it works exactly the same. It's the same resolution. Now this makes for some really interesting harmony ideas, is that instead of your dominant chord feeling further away from your home chord, with it being just a half step apart, you get some interesting voice leading there. And what I think is really, really cool, and is kind of the whole idea of this video, is that you can just do that over and over and over again, all the way through an octave, if not across multiple octaves. You could do it 24 times in a row and stretch 2 octaves just with chromatic root motion, just running dominant 7 chords just down half steps, and it theoretically works. It's not the most pleasant sound, and I don't really know what the full practical application of that is, but the fact that you can get away with it, and I personally like to use it as a filler. If you want to just take up a little bit of chords to get from one tonal area to another tonal area, that's always a fun trick to pull out, is just go walk straight down, chromatic, half steps, and just dominant, 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 straight down until you get to the chord that it is you're trying to get to. And now you're in a whole new area, and you kind of got there in a pretty strange way. Someone listening to that is going to be probably a little bit confused as to how you did it. So I think that's pretty cool. I put this in a time lapse just because it took a little while, and I didn't want to make you all watch me write it out, but this is just dominant chords going down in chromatic motion across an octave. So here it is across an octave. Now this G resolves you to that A flat, and your C sharp to the C. And then the G sharp gets you to a G, and the C to a B, and so on and so forth the whole way across. So you can think about it as, if this is your 1, your A, your final chord is your 1, that's what you're trying to get to, then this B is a 5 of 5, and this B flat is just a tritone subbed 5. So it's a dominant chord. It has the exact same tendency tones as the dominant chord. It's just not starting on the root note of a dominant chord. So we can call it a flat 2 7 chord, but for all intents and purposes, that's a 5 chord. That is a dominant 7 chord that's getting you back to 1. It has the exact same tendency tones. It works exactly the same. So this this D flat is just a 5 of 5 of this B. And this E flat is just a 5 of 5 of this D flat. And this F is just a 5 of 5 of this E flat, so on and so forth, right? And then each chord in the middle is just a tritone sub of what the actual 5 would be. So if we have E as our 5 of 5 of D, right? Then what is the actual 5 of a D chord? It's A major, or A7 rather. This is E flat, is just a tritone away. So there it is. You can run, this is literally a full octave of all of this works. Just half step motion, dominant chords is all technically proper resolution. And I think it's a pretty fun thing to use. You can use this however you please. And I think that's pretty cool.
Hope you enjoyed this. If you did, let me know, because I love doing this stuff. I love talking about this. I know I'm not the most eloquent with my words. I'm very, what's the word? I'm not super comfortable talking to a camera. Like, even doing this right now just feels a little bit odd. But I'm sure that if I keep doing this because anyone wants more things that I'm thinking about out on the internet, that I will probably get a little bit better at it and maybe stop sounding quite so goddamn awkward. So yeah, thank you for watching if you made it this far, and let me know if you liked it and if there's anything else you'd want me to talk about music theory wise or other stuff wise. I don't know. Let me know. Thank you guys.